Welcome to UCF Knightline, your source for UCF sports and former player information.
Hello, Night Nation. This is Andrew Phegley coming to you from the 1148 studios, and by my side, as always, is
Trylko. Hello, everyone.
All right, this is episode number 55, and we talk about another loss today.
But congratulations on a podcast that ends in a 5. I
know
you get
yeah.
very excited about the ones that end
that.
in 0 and the ones that end in 5.
Yep, definitely excited about that. We've made it through 55 episodes, but again, we can't talk about a UCF win. They had a game against UCON, obviously, and lost 40-13. And really, it was a lot worse than 40-13 by, the things that happened out there and all that. There were definitely some things that we would like to have back.
As we were heading out of the stadium, Bright House Network Stadium, a sparse crowd, by the way, 26,669 announced, but I'm not sure that it was that, and it certainly wasn't that at the end. A friend of the podcast said, "Hey, I'm apologizing now. I might not listen to you guys. It's hard to relive all of this."
It is.
I appreciated the honesty.
Yeah, like we've said, it's hard to come on here and talk about this. I sometimes actually think, God, do we even want to do this week, to be honest with you? But we're here. We're going to talk about it.
It's group therapy.
It is.
Yeah.
It's best to talk about it. I think we were discussing maybe on one of our off weeks this year, we will maybe do a live YouTube thing and have it available for people to call in. So look for us to talk a little bit more about that later on and in the coming weeks, and we will update everybody on Twitter and all that stuff. But you can call in, you can talk to us. It'll be live on YouTube.
That's something to look forward to.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
I'm excited about that.
I'm looking forward to that more than I am UCF playing at Temple.
I tested a little bit the other night after I did the Jeff Godfrey interview. I was already, had everything pulled up on YouTube, so I tested my program stuff a little bit, my technical stuff, and I think I've got that available and ready to do that. I just played some music on YouTube with our logo up there the other night, and I think a couple people, clicked on there to see. I saw there was a couple people besides me on there. So, yeah, it could be really cool, actually. So, I'd love to talk to people on here. All right, well, we can look forward to that. We've got John Swift joining us later for Crunching the Numbers. We've got Kyle Israel, of course, joining us. We've got a Temple insider named Sean that's going to join us later on. Still going to talk about all this. Kyle has some interesting things to say. Jeff Godfrey had some interesting stuff to say the other night, and I interviewed him, and it was only available on YouTube. It was as an extra, and it's up there if you'd like to see that. He made a comment on Twitter last week saying that he should be offensive coordinator for UCF, so that's interesting, and he tells us about that in the interview. Also, we have a couple clips from George O'Leary. We have just the normal clip, that we always have of him talking after the game, which he really says nothing. And then we've got another one that I think it was Bianchi that asked him about how does it feel to have the fans and people want you fired or whatever. So.
Well, on that point, several things happened in this game that through the first part of the season hadn't happened yet, right? I saw a couple of fans with brown bags on their
Absolutely.
faces. There was a big chorus of boos at halftime. Less so later because most of those people left
right.
at halftime. And then, of course, notably the pregame flying of the banner that's made some headlines calling for O'Leary to step down.
Yeah, that was sponsored by the Knights Pub, and, most people that are familiar with UCF are familiar with the Knights Pub, and we talk a little bit later on about that with Kyle Israel as well. And, yeah, so...
I mean, I don't think that does anything. I think it's a publicity stunt.
Yeah.
And, but they're not targeting people that would disagree with it, like me. I'm not their target demographic.
No, I was
to
with
go to
a
the
group
Knights
of
Pub.
people, and I say this later on in the interview with Kyle. I was definitely with a group of people that did not approve of that and thought that it was very low class and everything else. Whatever. People do things for whatever reason they do them, and even if we agree with it or don't agree with it, it was there, and it takes a lot to get something like that to happen, I believe. So that should give us an idea if we haven't got an idea already where we are with this program at this point.
Oh, I left out another embarrassing thing. The UConn's self-created trophy.
That they paraded around the
field. That they brought
field.
down, that they had on the sideline, they awarded to themselves so that they could fly back to Connecticut with it. But to have that whole thing happen on our field is another embarrassing. Can I be glass half full, though?
Sure.
We still could be bowl eligible.
We'd have to win every game.
We have to win every game.
Yeah, and that's not going to happen. So.
But we're not out of a bowl picture, JJ.
Yeah.
All right, I'm trying.
Okay.
Trying.
Well, let's hear what George O'Leary had to say after the game.
Obviously very disappointed as far as the outcome and just the continued mistakes we're making offensively and defensively. And just a lot of kids out there, in my opinion, that aren't ready yet, but injuries and loss of scholarships have forced us to put them on the field. So, again, just too many easy scores, too many dumb mistakes out there in all phases, offense, defense, and special teams. So, again, not a good game. As I told the team after it, I didn't have very many positive comments to make to them regarding the game, and I'll deal with it tomorrow after I watch the tape and make sure what I saw is what I saw. So.
All right, well, there's the wise words again of George O'Leary, saying nothing that he accepts any, of the responsibility for UCF losing. It's all on the players.
Well, another one of his quotes post-game starts off with, "We got kids out there when you watch a game that aren't ready yet." And I thought, all right, here's where he's going to take some responsibility and accountability for he and the coaching staff having those players ready, fundamentally ready. And we all know the mistakes in this game. That safety play, ridiculous. But he follows that sentence up with, "They are the ones dropping the ball and missing tackles." Now, that's true as well. The players have to accept responsibility for their part. But again, he does not, nor does the coaching staff, say anything was on them.
Yeah, I think that's unfortunate because some of this definitely is on them. I had a little bit of a conversation with somebody during the game yesterday about this, and, he made some good points and I made some good points. But, it's definitely, in my opinion, a bit of a coaching problem as well. Now, like I said earlier, Bianchi, I believe, if it's not him, whatever, I apologize. But here's his answer. Here's George O'Leary's answer to that question of what does it matter to him, basically, if people fly banners and say that George O'Leary should be fired?
Fire O'Leary? Well, I think they've said that for 12 years. So I don't get all worried about that. And I think the big thing is, the coaching staff hasn't forgotten how to coach. And I think we've won a lot of games here. And the issue right now is getting players basically quicker, better. And as far as better, quicker, and they're young, and some of them aren't just ready from a strength standpoint. But you can't, as a coach, you can't put up with the mistakes I see out there. That's one thing that we got to make sure we rectify and correct that. But I don't worry about people who fire this and fire that. I've been at this too long to be concerned about stuff like that.
Trace, what do you think about that comment there?
Well, and another comment that he gave was that on the number of fans that were not there, the number of fans that left, well, they buy the tickets, they got to do what they got to do. Taking a jab at the fans, I'm looking for more accountability. Is that going to make things better? Is that going to make us feel better if he steps up and takes some accountability? But we talked to a number of people that are fired up and want to place some of that responsibility on him. And you and I spoke in the stands about what George O'Leary makes, bringing in $1 million, $1.5 million, right, a year. Buck stops with him. I'm not one of those that's on the fire George O'Leary bandwagon, and I don't support the actions by flying the plane, and I just think that was a publicity stunt. But I do think there are some structural problems that if we don't right and soon, this is a program that's trending in the wrong direction.
Yeah, we need to. This year's done, folks. I mean, it's done. I honestly don't think we're even going to win a game. This year is done, but we need to start this year coaching kids up to perform better next year and making positive things come out of negatives from this year for next year and the years later, because these kids are going to remember this. It can be used as a motivational thing, well, last year you went out there and, it sucked. Next year can be better. Learn from our mistakes this year, make next year better. We'll have a full recruiting class, and, there's been talk about that as well this week. We need to overcome these things. We need to overcome them. We've done it before. We'll do it again.
And I think Kyle Israel is coming up is going to give us some perspective on being on that last winless team and the comparisons. And longtime UCF fans endured that, what was a very long losing streak. But, of course, the expectations game has changed a lot in a decade plus. And I remember I mentioned this to you several weeks ago on the podcast where a friend of mine said, I don't think you guys capitalized enough after the Fiesta Bowl, and I bristled about that in the offseason when he said it. Boy, it's really starting to feel like he may have been right about that.
It is. So let's hear what Kyle Israel has to say this week. Welcome to Inside the Huddle with former UCF quarterback Kyle Israel, brought to you by the Little Greek Fresh Grill. Fresh, flavorful, fabulous. Waterford Lakes, 855 North Althea Trail, Orlando. All right, joining us again, Kyle Israel. Kyle, I don't even know what to say again. I'm getting tired of not having anything really to say about this. I'm getting tired of having to ask questions about the same thing over and over again. Is there anything different that we can talk about this week?
That's a tough question, honestly. I don't know that there's a whole lot different other than the fact that Justin Holman was there and played and didn't seem to bring the spark that I had gone out on his behalf and was saying that he would provide. I think that was the thing that, aside from just the mental errors and the lack of focus and the penalties and the stupid mistakes, I was thinking that Justin would bring more than what he did. And that could be, I'm not going to make excuses for him, but it could be rust. Who knows how well healed that hand was. It kind of looked really awkward the entire game, like he almost couldn't bend it in that glove, bend his fingers. But, you could see that he wasn't comfortable. I thought the offensive line actually did a better job in the running game initially at the beginning of the game. Unfortunately, we got behind so quickly again. And so basically abruptly there in the second quarter that we had to get away from the running game. But you could see what Justin added in the zone read game. We ran him a couple of times. He added an element of, an element to the running game where it allowed the running backs to have that zone read and open up that aspect of the game a little bit more. But, just some poor decisions on his behalf. The first interception, over to his left on third down. Those guys are playing cover 2 and 2-man a lot. And you got to know that you can't throw a curl route into that if the guy's not going to work inside. So it's so hard to tell guys whether or not it's misreads or it's routes that aren't hitting the right landmarks. Obviously, on some of those passes that you saw from Justin, there was some serious lack of communication between himself and the receivers, whether or not they were supposed to break it off to the sideline, and they kept going down the field. He threw some down the field, and then they broke it off. And you just wonder if that's because he hasn't been getting those reps, if the lack of focus from the receiver core is that much so that we just really can't get on the page as far as route adjustments. But those are very glaring, and usually those type of mistakes are fairly hard to see with the naked eye, and unfortunately for us, it was very obvious. So I don't think that we got better on the defense side of the ball. I think we're probably getting a little bit worse there than what we saw in the beginning of the season. And, offensively, I thought we started out well, but Justin didn't get help. I mean, we dropped some key passes for him the first drive. Should have been a caught touchdown in the back of the end zone. Trylko Smith should have converted a first down on a dig route there in the beginning of the game. Number 82, I forget his name, who had 3 touchdowns last week. He dropped some key passes as well. So nobody really helped Justin very much, to be candid. But I did think that the offensive line, from a pass protection perspective, and then initially in the run game, played seemingly better if there's some sort of bright spot in the team.
As you look at 6 games in and 6 losses, I know there was a lot of talk on message boards and Andrew messaging with people on Twitter. The distinctions between young players making mistakes a lack of fundamentals, a lack of talent, poor coaching. If you were to divvy this up amongst those categories after 6 straight losses, how would you divvy up?
Well, I think of it as like 33.3% across the board for all 3 of those categories. I think coaching, more so, not as much in game, but more so in the recruiting. Now, have our hands been tied a little bit, missing 15 scholarships. Is that glaringly obvious this season? Absolutely. Those sanctions definitely hurt us. Thank you, David Kelly and Keith Tribble. But when you look at the recruiting that we could have been doing and that we were trying to do, I think we missed some key areas. I'm being completely candid. And we just don't have the talent level that you see across the country. We can't really compete even within our own conference, obviously, with the talent that we do have. Now, can some of the guys that we have on the field now, could they have been better a year or 2 or 3 down the road when they mature? Sure. But there's got to be some guys that could have stepped up. But when it's, it's a lot easier to be young and playing when there's people to pick up the slack around you that are kind of experienced. But when we have so much young guys, nobody's picking up the slack for anybody. So those mistakes that one guy makes, well, the other guy that's young too is making the same mistake, and the next guy to him is making the same mistake, and he's young. So kind of there's like a snowball effect, for lack of a better term. So I look at the youth as a huge issue, and then the injuries, and that's one of the things, guys, that I'm very shocked about, and it's really a head scratcher to me because we have had, since Coach O'Leary has been here, one of the best strength and conditioning programs in the country. Year in, year out, when the coaches go to the National Coaching Convention and strength coaches compare numbers in regards to what their teams are doing, we've always been at the top and really been able to stay away from those catastrophic injuries or the injury bug as a whole when you look at how many guys are injured. And so that's what I can't really figure out. Now, when I'm watching the game, and I watched it closely this morning, you can just tell by body structure with some of these younger players that they're not developed in their arms and their forearms, their calves, the quad area. I mean, those are things that you can tell, especially having played the game and been in the locker room and workouts and on the field and playing against big-time caliber opponents. You can just tell, like you hear about the thing when a team walks off the bus, they already beat you because of their size, and that has a mental effect on you. Well, when I'm just looking at this team, we just don't have the size yet at all, or the speed to compete, and that goes back to the youth, and that takes some time to build. So I think it's a combination of all those things. I'm not sure if Coach is losing this team a little bit, mentally. I know that it looks like, in my mind, that some of these guys are shutting it down, but there's just nobody, you can't always look to coaches if you're a player for the motivation, and sometimes you want to look at older players, and those guys aren't there. I think one of the more vocal leaders, number 17, his name escapes my mind right now, but he's on the sideline injured. He's been in the program for a long time. But I think it's a combination of things. And when you look at play calling yesterday, I thought that it was fairly better, again, some of the designs. I just don't think we have anybody that can execute it. You saw Justin Holman run the zone read, sprints out at the defensive end, or linebacker pops to him. He threw the bubble out to Nick Patty, which is a good play design. It's one of the new things that college football coaches are doing. I'm glad to see we incorporate it, but then Justin throws it low, Nick can't catch it, and we can't make it convert on a 3rd and 2. And so I've run that type of offense here recently in Poland, and it's a great offense. And I was glad to see some of those schemes in the game plan. But if you just can't execute them, then it's all for naught. So I think it's a combination of the 3, and it's just disappointing because it's so bad that it's, at this point, everybody's looking at Coach O'Leary and everybody's looking at the coaching staff because you really can't do anything. You can't send the players home.
Some of these things I feel are definite coaching issues when it comes down to fundamentals and the things that people should know before they're out on that field. Speaking mostly of Hayden Jones and the kickoff return, safety. I think situational awareness and knowing where you're at on the field and knowing what to do at all times is a coached thing. I personally, and we talked about this before, I knew that in 4th or 5th grade. Mm-hmm. I knew that I should never have done something like that. Is that a direct, effect of coaching, or I know it was partially, player, mistake, and he's a walk-on, but he's a junior. He's been around for a while. What do you have to say about that situation?
I almost think, yes, I would say a huge aspect of that should go on the player. I mean, it was just a dumb mistake by both of those guys back there. But maybe, one of the other things I was thinking about is that when you have so much youth, are you accustomed to coaching those guys up all the way completely detailed? Are there things that you would just assume that players would know, where in this case guys are so young and so inexperienced that assumption is really turning, making an ass out of you and me. Coach like to always tell us, don't assume, because it just makes an ass of you and me. But I'm wondering if they're kind of overlooking some of the details just based on the assumption that these players are going to know the basic things. And so if that's the case, then you could say, sure, a little bit in coaching in that specific play. But you also got to think on some level, man, that guy's got to know that if he steps out of the end zone and looks down at his feet and then steps back into the end zone, you should know that. But I kind of wonder, because we've done a good job here of having strong senior classes and junior classes, and a lot of times, the details are kind of ironed out over time from being in the program, and learning is ironed out over time from being in the program. And when you're actually having to coach those guys directly, the guys that you would assume would be learning the processes and how we do things over time, but now they're on the field, some of those details that you are assuming they may know already, they potentially don't. And that would be an oversight in coaching, in my opinion, if that's the case. That's one circumstance I think is a bonehead play, but you look on the other side of the field and UConn made some bonehead plays. That guy standing in the end zone, he was trying to down the punt on the 1 yard line, and the ding dong is standing there a yard into the end zone. So it's not only UCF that made some boneheaded plays in that game, and you're just kind of assuming if you're UConn's coach, well, that guy got to know that he can't be standing in the end zone if he wants to down on the one, right? And it just really comes down to field presence. So, I think that's kind of where I stand in that regard.
Arguably, UCF has played 4 of the easiest games on its schedule, Furman, FIU, UConn, and Tulane, and is 0-6. How does this season so far compare to UCF's last winless season? How does it look or feel differently?
I don't think they're comparable at all. I think the expectations in 2004 were much lower. We obviously hadn't had the success before. I think we had lost 3 games in a row the prior season, and then Coach O'Leary was hired. And at that point in time, you were playing 22 true freshmen that you understood in camp were going to have to play for you. And you knew there were going to be growing pains, and you knew it was a process. And you weren't in Bright House Network Stadium, and you were only in the MAC conference, and you hadn't been through Conference USA. You weren't in the AAC. There were no anticipation levels of you being in a Power 5 conference in years to come. So it's 100% different. I don't think that we saw the injuries that we had seen this year in that season. You were playing a true freshman quarterback in myself, who I don't think was as highly recruited as a Bo Schneider or Tyler Harris, who, and that's just the fact of the matter. And then when you look at how depleted that team was in 2004, like I said a couple weeks ago, we had Brandon Marshall and Mike Walker, NFL players, playing on defense. Brandon Marshall's on the way to a Hall of Fame wide receiver career in the NFL, and he had to be a safety for us because Coach O'Leary was changing the program, and guys that weren't buying into his vision were basically gone from the team, and so we were extremely depleted. And so when you look at it now, were we playing as high a caliber schedule? Probably not back that season, although we did open up Wisconsin. But we also didn't have the expectation level that does this team this year. And so I don't think that they're very comparable in the grand scheme of things. And I just don't think that ultimately you expect to see this big of a drop-off. You may have a rebuilding year, but in my mind, a rebuilding year is 6-6 or 5-7. At worst 4-8. But to be So looking like we're on track for hopefully 2-10 or 1-11. Just based off the way we're playing right now, I don't think that those seasons are very comparable. People kind of saw that we were going to be rebuilding that year for sure, like from the bottom up all the way around from the program. And now I don't think we're at a place where we should be this bad.
So we've talked a little bit about coaching. We've talked a little bit about bonehead, player moves. Now, did you see or did you hear about the banner that was flying over the stadium pregame? And I don't know if it was during the game, but that said basically, O'Leary, it's time to step down. And then a heart and the Knights pub on there. Everybody that goes to UCF or has been to UCF in the last few years has probably gone to the Knights pub at one point. What do you think of that and them flying that banner?
Well, I was actually in the room the day that banner was ordered, honestly. I knew that it was going to be up there flying. I didn't say anything. I had an opportunity to say something on Thursday night on 740. I decided not to do that. One of my best friends is a partner in that business. And, I kind of advised against it. I thought that I didn't think that it would garner as much attention as it did, honestly. I know that initially they were probably going to say something a little bit worse, but they just said step down instead of fire O'Leary. So I knew that it was going to be flying. I knew that, 10 minutes after the agreement was made, there was nothing that I could say to them was going to change their mind on making that decision. But I think it was more of a publicity stunt. I don't think that the guy that made the decision knows a lick about football or anything in regards to the game. I don't think he has any true insight into the program. And for him and for them, I should say, it was certainly a way to get publicity to their bar. And probably a little bit tasteless and classless in my opinion, even though they're my good friends. That's what I truly believe. But ultimately, I think if they were looking for publicity and people to recognize them, then they got what they were looking for. That's basically what I think about it. But I definitely knew that it was going to be up there flying around. And when I started getting pictures and text and seeing on CBS Sports, I was like, well, these guys got what they were looking for. And honestly, they don't need the publicity. That place is packed, and they're printing money at that place. And so it's not like they were trying to garner business with any stretch, but kind of just, more of a prank, more so than being educated boosters. And like you would see at another school that are putting something on a billboard, I think that they were just doing it as kind of a funny joke more than anything else. And I looking on message boards and other thing, I think some people took it very personally. They are really into the program, but it was what it was. And, ultimately we're 0-6, and there's probably a lot of people out there that feel the same way. And they just happen to put it behind the plane in front of everybody's eyes.
Yeah, I don't think anything like that's going to happen. I will say that I was standing with probably 4 or 5 former players' family members when I saw it for the first time, and they were all very upset by it. They were not happy about that at all. In fact, a couple of them, reached their middle fingers up and, saluted the plane in that way. So I don't think that is the total, feeling from everybody, but I know there are certain people that feel like that, and yes, they did accomplish what they wanted to by getting publicity, whether it was positive or negative.
And when Coach O'Leary said after the game that he doesn't pay attention to those things, I really don't think that he does. I think that, his tenure here there's always been ups and downs, especially in the first couple of seasons. So, fan base like ours, which is, in my opinion, generally uneducated when it comes to football, not totally, not everybody, but generally, they're, in today's society, when you want things now, that's going to be the response from a lot of people is, fire O'Leary, clean house. Everybody has expectations in their workplace, and everybody has expectations with their jobs, and if they don't fulfill those expectations, then, your job is on the line. So I understand that, and that seems to be the argument that people try to make when they're saying, well, if I had the equivalent of an 0-6 or 0-12 season in the job that I have, I wouldn't be around either. But you're dealing with young kids, and there's a lot of there's a lot of factors that go into a team being the way that it is, not just one individual person's performance. And yes, Coach Hitt's paid a lot of money, and he's done a lot of great things for this university. Really put us on the map. In my opinion, he's probably the face of this university, for good or bad. But I just think that you got to remember that these coaches, and not just Coach O'Leary, because obviously he's financially set, and whatever happens to him and how he decides to retire or whatever that is when the time comes, I think when he chooses to do so. But there's other people on the staff that have family, have children. People don't really care about that all the time, but it's something they need to be reminded of, because it's just a fact. I understand that they understand that they're in a performance-based industry, and that's what coaching is. But there are those families and that are tied to this program as well that should sometimes be considered.
Orlando Sentinel columnist, local provocateur Mike Bianchi's column in the Sunday Sentinel with the headline, "George O'Leary era at UCF may be coming to a sad end." What does this team have to do over the next 6 games to force Mr. Bianchi to rewrite that column at season's end in a more upbeat and positive way?
Win a game, win some games, beat one of these teams that are undefeated right now. Beat a Temple, beat a Houston, beat South Florida. Ultimately, I think that everything is okay if we can beat South Florida on Thanksgiving, if people realize the circumstances that we were in this season. Now, if we go 0-12, it's hard to really tell the thought process of Dr. Hitt or Coach O'Leary. Really, I thought that he may retire after 6 Fiesta Bowl myself, but I don't know what his plans are. I don't pretend to know. I certainly don't understand Dr. Hitt and his thought process on some things. And so I think that we definitely need to beat South Florida, and I think we probably need to knock off one of these top teams in our conference for people to kind of take a step back and take a breather. But if we go 0-12, there's going to be a lot of pressure to make some changes from just the fan base in general, based on attendance and based on a number of other things. I don't know if Dr. Hitt can overlook all that, although he's been pretty steadfast and grown this university to where it is today based on his vision and the vision that he had for it. And so far, it's been extremely successful. If you look at the athletics program as a whole and the education that you can get and receive at UCF, med school and other things, I think he's very confident in decisions that he has made, and I don't think he's going to waver from doing what he thinks is best. So I think just to get some of the pressure off, we would have to win some of those games. But if we go 0-12, it's certainly going to be very tough to turn a blind eye.
One final question for you, because I know you're a busy guy there at the Little Greek. If you had the opportunity to go in front of the team this week, what would you say to them?
I would say to them, as a former player, that you just got to really realize that we're really behind the players. I'm really pulling for them. I know that the situation is tough. I personally have been in their position back in 2004. It's not something that gets easier. Losing is never easy, and if it becomes easy, then you should not be a player on this team. Losing is not okay. It's not something that we should get accustomed to, and it's certainly not a part of the culture that we've established at UCF. And ultimately, those guys got to play as a team and play for each other. And despite who's in the stands and despite what people are saying outside of the program, but the most important thing is the guys in that room and them playing as one unit and working to get better. Because is our season lost this year in regards to some of the goals that we set out for ourselves? Yeah, it looks like they are at this point in time. However, there should be goals throughout their careers, and there should be personal goals, and ultimately those goals will lead to team success. And I would go back and say, if you guys had any personal goals at the beginning of the season that you think could help this football team, go back and look at those, see what they are, and remind yourself of the hard work that you put yourself through this summer and this off season. Because ultimately you're still going to go out and represent yourself. You're still going to go out and represent your family, and you're still representing UCF, record aside. And they just need to realize that, because I think when you're in the state that you're in, the environment that you're in, and the climate that is our football program right now, it's very easy to lose sight of some of those really important things. And those are the things that they should keep close to themselves as one another, and to realize that they're playing for their families, and there's a lot to play for. I mean, whether or not they think Coach O'Leary is going to be here next year, whether or not Coach O'Leary is here next year, those guys need to understand that they're still fighting for a job. there's going to be guys coming in next year and next year's class. They're going to try to get on this football field if they want to be a part of the legacy that UCF football has developed into over the last 10 to 12 years. And even before that, that they need to play their asses off, game in and game out, and not lose sight of some of those personal goals and the goals that they set as a team. And that's probably what I would say. And I would just let them know that the former players, we're still here, we're still behind them. We believe in them. We understand the situation that they're in. We understand how difficult of a situation that is. But ultimately, they got to look at themselves in the mirror and say, are they doing everything they can possibly do to make this team and help this team get better? And are they truly doing everything they can to earn their scholarships that they're provided? Because if you're just going to try to pull off now at the end of the season and kind of coast into the off season, then they're in the wrong place to do that, and they shouldn't be a part of the program. And that's probably how I would address them.
Well, I'm inspired by that for sure. So I hope that one day you get the opportunity to do that and to talk to these kids. It would be a great time this year. UCF, if you're listening, Kyle Israel is the guy to come and talk to your guys. Please give him the chance to do that. What's going on at the Little Greek?
Well, we've had 2 weeks that have broken records for us. We really, I just want to thank everybody that's been supporting us. Some guy, Andrew Wright, I appreciate him coming in. He listens to the podcast. He's definitely a big fan of the program, and so thanks for stopping in, Andrew. I do appreciate that. He didn't know that I was going to say anything, but we do appreciate his support. But things are going great here. Again, the catering, I saw that somebody mentioned on the message board that we should go to the companies in the vicinity and give stuff to the secretaries, catering menus. So when we have those in our hand this week, I'm certainly going to be going out to the nearby businesses, Lockheed, Siemens, Aon, some of the other ones over in Research Park, and just delivering catering menus to the secretary. So look out for that. If you see me walking through your halls with a Little Greek shirt on, stop me and say hello. But we do appreciate the support that we're getting from guys that listen to the podcast and supporters of the program and just the general area around here, because we couldn't be happier with the way business is going, and hopefully we'll be up to our 18 stores in Central Florida in the next 24 to 36 months, and we'll have a Little Greek somewhere near you.
Awesome. Thank you very much for joining us. I know it's hard to come on here and talk about all this stuff every week, and I greatly appreciate it. Yeah,
absolutely. Thanks for having me on, and you never know next week. We'll see what can happen. We already we won a thriller up in Philadelphia a few years back. We'll see if we can't do another one like that.
You never know. That's the great thing about college football and football in general. You never know. Thank you again.
Absolutely. No problem. Talk to you later, guys.
You know who may be benefiting from these losses in some way on the publicity? Another packed house at the Basement in Orlando. Free beer during every UCF game until the Knights win. And crowds are growing as the word has gotten out. Central Florida Future notes more than 2,000 beers were given away during the Saturday loss versus UConn. Nearly 12 kegs worth.
I'm telling you, those people are losing their butts with, spending all that money on that beer. I mean, it's just that company or the group of guys that own the Basement, I feel so sorry for them because they're losing a ton of money.
Well, before we went on with Kyle, I asked him if he was considering giving away free baklava at the Little Greek, and he said, no way.
Absolutely
He'd lose too much money. How's the shave thing going?
I shaved because my boss was
I noticed that.
Totally on me the other day. So, yesterday was really the only opportunity that I saw to win. So when I came home last night, I was like, I had to do it. I also have a funeral to go to this week, so I wanted to look good for that. So I'm sorry that I couldn't uphold that comment that I made.
Your boss, no doubt concerned about professionalism, also is aware of what this football team has done through 6 weeks and may even be aware of some of the statistical data that our very own John Swift has compiled.
Welcome to Crunching the Numbers, featuring John Swift.
Hello, Knight fans. This week's segment will focus on the defense. Here are some trending themes over the last 3 games. We have been left in bad field position. Opponents have scored 62 points off of turnovers. We're also giving up chunk yardage plays. 10 different players have rushed for over 10 yards on a single carry over the last 3 games, including 21 runs that went for over 10 yards. We've also given up 28 passes that went for over 10 yards, which represents 65% of all completions over the last 3 games. Where does that put us for the season? UCF is giving up 397 yards a game. We are number 88 in scoring defense at 30 points a game. Over the last 5 years, our average rank has been number 30, including 2 top 5 finishes. Third downs continue to be a problem for us, letting our opponents convert on 38.2% of third downs. We had 5 sacks, which takes us to 9 on the season, but still ranked number 95 in the FBS. We are dead last in takeaways at number 117. We've recovered 4 fumbles, but still have 0 interceptions. We're one of 3 teams in the FBS without an interception. The Knights travel to the city of brotherly love to face a red-hot Temple team. I was there to see the catch, and I hope we find something as exciting to cheer about. I'm John Swift, and this has been Crunching the Numbers.
Quick look at the American. After 6 weeks, the conference now 6-12 against Power 5 teams. Best win of the weekend. Boy, I don't like to do this very often, but hats off to the South Florida Cows. They beat the ACC Syracuse Orange 45-24. Some other winners of note. Temple now 5-0. We're going to get a preview, Andrew, in just a few moments of our next game. They thrashed Tulane 49-10 after we gave up 45 points. Oh, goodness. Houston also 5-0. They are getting ready to climb into the top 25 poll. So a couple of AAC teams undefeated, so that's good. They beat SMU 49-28, and Tulsa beat Louisiana Monroe 34-24.
Yeah, you know, I said in the beginning I think that Temple was going to be good, and we're going to get hammered there, I believe. I guess we could probably do our pick stuff now. That would probably be a good time.
I wonder what you're going to pick.
Yeah, I'm going to pick Temple 44-14.
Boy, kind of close. I've got Temple 45-12.
Well, there you go, yeah.
Just because we had the one game with Tulane where we scored the garbage
points. Do you remember
points,
what our things were last week?
You had UConn winning, and I picked UCF to win because I'm foolish, apparently.
Yeah. So,
hanging on to hope.
That's about it with that. Yeah, there's more stuff with the American next week.
Some good games, and there's some chances for the American to really shine. Cincinnati travels to BYU Friday night. East Carolina just lost to them in a tight game. Houston goes to Tulane, so Houston looks to stay undefeated. Ole Miss travels to Memphis. That should be an interesting game. Ole Miss is a top 15 ranked program, and Memphis is just on the verge of being into the top 25. South Florida heads to UConn. We'll see what there's no trophy involved in that one, though. I don't think they have any manufactured trophy for that. And Tulsa's at East Carolina. But the game that we most care about is UCF at Temple. That's a night game on Saturday night. Have had some good games in the past, as John alluded to. And boy, what a memory for him to have been there.
Is that on TV?
Yes.
It's actually on national television. I mean,
well,
people will
everything's
actually
on
be
TV.
able to see that. It's not on ESPN3 where you have to watch it on your computer or something.
While we talk with the Temple Insider, I will look that up and we'll talk about it after the Q&A.
All right. 5 questions with an insider, getting to know this week's opponent.
Sean Pastor has been covering Temple football and basketball since 1989. He was the founder and editor of Owl Scoop from 1994 to 2007. Then he started Owls Daily, the Temple site on Scout.com. He's also covered the Owls for the Philadelphia Inquirer and the Philadelphia Daily News.
Sean, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. Temple is off to its first 5-0 start since 1974, and that includes a season-opening win over Penn State. Is it starting to feel like this could be a special season for the Owls?
Yeah, I think it started feeling like that when the final gun sounded against Penn State. You know, that had been 74 years since they had beaten Penn State. There had been a long period of time where they didn't play, but still, you go back a good 30, 40 years, they've been playing on a regular basis, and just that alone, you could say, would make the season for a lot of Temple fans. And now it's sort of just moving along here, and it's becoming a sort of a, you know, it really is becoming a dream-type season as things have gone on so far.
Well, a nightmare for UCF fans is that Temple can put up some points. 3 of Temple's 5 wins have been on the road, 25 points being the low mark this season. Talk a little bit about the offense, especially the play of quarterback P.J. Walker in leading the offense.
P.J.'s having a pretty good year. I know. You know, last year it's funny. The team, to a large degree, I think it's really just been incremental improvement from where they were a couple of years ago at Coach Matt Rule's first year. They won a couple games, just 2 games, and then last year they got to 500. P.J. Walker this year, the big difference in his game, and you may remember, that Temple UCF game 2 years ago at Lincoln Financial was that crazy game that came down to the final play. And Walker had a huge game, and of course Blake Bortles had a huge game. Last year, the entire Temple offense took a huge step back. And there was a period Temple got better, largely because their defense improved significantly last season. But there came a point during the season last year where PJ was forcing things because the running game wasn't happening. The receiving corps was not that strong. It's improved significantly this year, and he became turnover prone. If you look at his statistics from his freshman year to his sophomore year, he had a huge slump. Essentially what's happened this year is he's got more weapons around him now, and he is just sitting back, and you see it as far as he's throwing the ball to 7-8 receivers are catching the balls in games, and he's not forcing things. The defense is still sort of the dominant part of the team, and it's making it a lot easier on him, and the team is benefiting.
Well, Temple boasts a balanced offense with running back Shaheed Thomas logging 503 yards on 100 carries and 6 touchdowns. What can you tell us about Thomas?
Well, Thomas is, he's on the small side. You try to define a runner. You've certainly not you've got downhill runners, you've got one-cut runners. He is, I would best define him as a multiple-cut runner. He's not a Barry Sanders stop on a dime, change direction, and move, but he has this tremendous ability to make multiple cuts while on the move. I guess shifty, maybe that's the easiest word to describe him. It's not world-class speed, but he is just shifty and hard to get a handle on. There was no expectation, even coming into the season at all, that he would emerge as a guy who you were going to give the ball to 25 times a game. That's been the big surprise. There was a feeling this year that there might be a running back by committee. The team has a couple of true freshmen who they really like, who they thought would kind of jump into the rotation. But right from the start in the Penn State game, Jahad Thomas just took charge and has been a guy who's been getting 25 carries a game really until yesterday. Well, the last couple games now, they've sort of had a pretty big lead, and he's been able to sit for the last quarter and a half. But he's equally dangerous as a receiver coming out of the backfield. They do a tremendous job setting him up for screens, and he's a guy who open field is difficult for a defense to deal with.
You mentioned earlier the defense still being a strong part of the team. A Tulane team that put up 45 points on UCF was held to just 8 first downs, 10 points, 110 total yards against Temple. I think Knights fans are very concerned about going to Temple. Tell us more about that Owls D.
Yeah, the Temple defense, I think its strength is that they're good on all 3 levels. They're very strong right in the middle, right at the nose. They've got a kid, Matt Ioannidis, who's a senior, who's almost certainly going to be playing on Sundays next year. They've got a couple pass rushers, several pass rushers, really. They rotate their defensive ends. What made a big difference yesterday, sort of the defense had a tremendous season opening effort against Penn State. The 3 games after that, the numbers were pretty good, but they didn't dominate like they did against Penn State. Yesterday, they were back to dominating again. Probably maybe the most talented pass rusher, Praise Martin Oblique, is returned to full strength. He's kind of been playing at half speed with a hamstring injury since preseason, and he was sort of back on the attack yesterday. So they really got after Tanner Lee, Tulane yesterday, with very little blitzing. They sacked him 4 times. They must have hit him a dozen times. But that's only the start. So we're talking about the different levels. Tyler Matakevich at linebacker is a senior who's the current NCAA leader in tackles. He's been starting since he was a freshman and is just about the best tackler I've seen in a Temple uniform. He's not going to miss a guy on the run. And then thirdly, in the third level, the 2 corners, Tavon Young and Sean Chandler are both guys that they can leave them alone on their receivers, have the safeties help out as needed against the run and so forth, because those guys can handle their job. That was really the big jump last year. Again, talking about that Temple UCF game a couple of years ago, in several games a couple of years ago, Temple's corners, their pass coverage in general, was awful. And Tavon Young is now a senior. He has just developed into a very, very solid corner on the one side. And the other kid, Sean Chandler, was a true freshman last year who came in on day one and took the starting job. He was probably their top recruit. Your corners don't get hyped up as much as when you get a top recruit, the tailback, a quarterback, and so forth. He was probably their top recruit last year, jumped right in, and, it just can handle that job at the other corner. So that, when you're set I think I hear that often from coaches. If you've got defensive tackles and a middle linebacker who can handle the middle of the field and your corners are strong, then it's going to set you up to be pretty good on defense.
Does Temple become bowl eligible with its 6th win over UCF next week? And how do you see the rest of the season going for the Owls with a home game with Notre Dame coming up on Halloween?
Yeah, it's again, it's been setting up as a dream season so far, really. There's every expectation that they should be able to take care of business against UCF. I know that Justin Holman is back at quarterback, and he really hurt them last year. The game, Temple was kind of improving last year when they played UCF. And at that point in the season, they had a number of things. They had a number of injuries, I think, going into that game. They really got dominated on both the offensive and the defensive line in that game down in Orlando. But sort of that's where the team is just much stronger, deeper, and more solid this year. So they should be able to flip that. After UCF, they're going to East Carolina, which is, at this point, looks like it's going to be a huge game. Temple's taking the lead. They're 2-0 in the East, and they won at Cincinnati. So, if they start to think about bowl games and everything else, the first thing that's going to come is thinking about it, trying to win the East Division in the American. And if they can win that game at East Carolina, that really sets them up, because beating Cincinnati has already put them ahead of the curve. With UCF struggling, South Florida still not with a win in the league. The other teams in the East at this point, ECU really looks like the biggest probable threat for challenging them for the top of the division. So that game's going to be huge. It's a Thursday night game. It's going to be on short. They're going to be playing UCF here Saturday night. Then they've got to go to ECU on the Thursday. So that's going to be a difficult turnaround. And then following on that is their home game against Notre Dame. So that little 2-week stretch is going to be huge. We'll see what level this team can reach. They've reached a level right now that they've rarely reached in the past. We're sitting here recording this, and the AP poll is going to get released sort of any minute here this afternoon. And I'm waiting for that to come in, because the fans of Temple are looking for, they haven't been ranked in the top 25 since 1979. And today could be today, or a win over UCF, if they could take care of business next Saturday, can put them in the top 25 for the first time in 35 years.
Well, that would definitely be something. All right, thank you very much for joining us, Sean. I really appreciate it. Good luck to Temple, and hopefully we can at least come out of there with a decent game being played.
All right, thanks, guys.
That game, looking it up, CBS Sports Network, Saturday at 7:30. Tune in.
Or tune out. Yeah, so that's where that game will be, and you don't have it, so you'll be coming over to my house.
That may happen. I've watched 5 of these first 6 in person, and I can't take any more. So I'm taking a week off from following this team around the country.
It's getting quite hard to go and watch. But we do have some guys in the NFL that are doing really well. So far, 10 former Knights have made starts in the NFL this year. Latavius Murray, Blake Bortles, Brandon Marshall, Kamar Aiken, Bruce Miller, Josh Sitton, Ja Reed, and then from last year, Clayton Geathers is doing pretty well there at Indianapolis as well. I don't have stats from today on those games, but I know that...
well, as we record, Blake and Tampa Bay are in a tight one.
And we're watching that over in the corner here. And, so last week it was Indianapolis against Jacksonville, and Clayton Gathers almost got to sack Blake Bortles,
That's
which
funny.
kind of would have been cool. Hey, man, how's it going? Wonder what the conversation would have been on the ground there.
Ja Reed on your Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, he's making some starts and helping out there on the line, and there's all kinds of stuff going on. I don't have stats today, but
All of that you can find in the Twitter sphere. But Brandon
can.
Marshall having a good year so far for
Absolutely.
the Jets. So Knights making us proud.
and they're saying Perryman's out for the year, basically.
Is it out for the year now?
I think so, yeah. I think so.
I hadn't heard that.
He had knee surgery the other day, I believe.
That'd be out for the
So,
year then,
yeah.
probably.
I don't know when that happened. It must have happened in the preseason at some point because he's never appeared in a game for...
No, and you'd said that earlier. That
And
you
there's
thought that
nobody-
there was something more to it than...
Yeah, Flacco doesn't have very many people to throw to now because Steve Smith's out this week, and so Kamar Aiken is one of their only hopes up there.
Good opportunity for him.
Time for some news and notes. And now, news and notes from the world of UCF sports.
Redshirt sophomore Holly Woolley is the AAC Athlete of the Week thanks to winning the FL Runners Invitational and placing second at the Florida State Invitational.
As we record, UCF women's soccer leads 3-1 late in the game against Tulsa. That follows a 3-1 win over Memphis Thursday. Up next, the Knights go to SMU on Thursday.
Men's soccer dropped 1-0 at home against Tulsa Saturday. That followed a 3-1 win over Temple Wednesday. Up next, the three-game homestand concludes with Stetson at 7 o'clock at the UCF Soccer Complex.
14 current and former softball Knights named to the 2014-15 NFCA All-American Scholar Athletes. Recognized players achieved a 3.5 grade point average or higher.
Fall practice continues for baseball. It concludes with the October 30th Black and Gold game set for 6 p.m. at the UCF Baseball Complex.
Practice is also underway for men's and women's basketball.
And as we record, volleyball is at Memphis. They took the first set 25-16. That follows a 3-1 loss at Cincinnati Friday. Up next, back home Friday night versus SMU.
And the UCF hockey team, you heard that right, hockey team takes to the ice at the Amway Center in the arena's first ever college hockey game. Against South Carolina, November 7th, the game follows the Solar Bears game at 7.
You don't get a lot of hockey news on the Knightline podcast.
That's great, though.
That's some exposure for them.
Yeah, it's great that they're, playing. I don't know what kind of a team South Carolina is. Maybe we should have a South Carolina hockey insider next week.
I'll work on that for you.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but yeah, that's good.
It'd be a late night start. It comes on after the Solar Bears game, so they won't start that till after 9:30.
All right. I think that's going to about do it for this. This is episode number 55. I'm Andrew Phegley.
I'm Trace Trylko. Go Knights!
Charge on.
UCF, charge on to the field. With our spirits, we'll never yield. Black and gold charge right through the line. Victory is our cry. BSCTO or Y. Tonight our Knights will shine.